and then we'll pray.
I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in that room last night. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear that God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it. And to ensure that our republic remains standing as the great beacon of light and hope and freedom in a world that desperately needs it. In God we trust was adorned above this rostrum. This motto was placed here as a rebuke of the Cold War era philosophy of the Soviet Union. That philosophy was Marxism and communism, which begins with the premise that there is no God. This is a critical distinction that is also articulated in our nation's birth certificate. G.K. Chesterton was the famous British philosopher and statesman, and he said one time, America is the only nation in the world that is founded upon a creed. And he said it's listed with almost theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. What is our creed? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, not born equal, created equal. And they are endowed by the same inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
The new House Speaker, what's he really like? Why did colleagues vote for him? We spoke with a longtime friend of his, the president of the Family Research Council. Tony Perkins, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
To begin, you've been a longtime friend of Speaker Mike Johnson. He was just newly elected. Now, after he was elected, there's been a lot of news reports out about him, both negative and positive. But in your view, what kind of man is he?
Well, he's actually what you see. I was just talking with him earlier today, and he's just amazed at how the media has focused on so many different things. And of course, he's not focusing a lot on what's being said. He's got a lot of work to do, and so he's zeroing in on the mission before him. But I really do believe what he said on the floor after he was elected by his colleagues is reflective of who he is. I've known Mike for probably over 25 years, and he operates from his faith, and so that guides what he does. And I think that was very clear. Nothing was forced. It was just kind of who he is. He's authentic, and I think his colleagues see that. They know that. That's why they have elevated him to this position to lead. He's a very thoughtful, caring, deep thinker, and I think he's going to do quite well as Speaker.
And I want to expand on that. On X, you wrote that, quote, he'll lead with spiritual insight and political courage. Could you expand on that and give us a sense of what to expect from him as a legislative leader?
You know, that's a really good question. What does that mean? I actually think he addressed that himself recently in an interview. He said, look, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. And so if you want to know where I stand, just read the Bible. And so when it comes to these issues that we're wrestling with today in public policy, that's his view. But he said, now I realize that I'm leading a conference that is made up of diverse thinkers and different districts. So that's my view, and I'm going to work toward consensus. And so he's not an enigma. He's not a puzzle to be figured out. He's made it very clear, and that's where I think as Christians engage in the political process who are Bible-believing Christians, it's not difficult to know where we're coming from. We, as the founders of this country, believed that the principles of Scripture give guidance to us in how we should live and how we should influence the world around us.
And what is your message to those who say that faith and religion have no place in politics?
Well, America wouldn't be here if that were the case.
Oh, I'm just so tempted. I'm so tempted right now. There are those who would be thinking, but what about separation of church and state? Yeah, you know what? You got to stop getting your history lessons from CNN, okay? You just saw our nation elect as Speaker of the House a man of great faith that would probably put a smile on George Washington's face, Ben Franklin's face, Thomas Jefferson's face, John Adams, Sam Adams, Jay, on it goes, John Jay. There is no such thing as separation of church and state when it comes to the state ruling over the church. The Bible is clear, and our founding fathers were clear, and the argument to the letter to Jefferson from the Baptist Convention in Danbury, Connecticut was, make sure, President Jefferson, that you remember we've come from England where there was a state church and we don't want that anymore. And Jefferson said, I promise you guys, there'll be a separation of church and state. The state will never impose itself upon the church. And that is the context of this argument of separation of church and state. It's fallacy, it's false, and you can't go to Washington, D.C. without seeing God everywhere. And that's because this nation was founded upon our Christian principles. And it is an amazing moment. Everything you heard from Representative Johnson, Speaker of the House now Johnson, is something that you would have heard from any one of our founding fathers. And that's America. You may not like that, but that's America. And it's quite amazing. So it's sad, though, that in churches this stuff would be shocking. That's what's sad. Churches ought to make sure that all their people understand his story in America. So that's a good title for a book, huh?